Distinguished speakers, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for inviting me to talk at this important conference. The title of my presentation, Education, Another Brick Out of the Wall, is a paraphrase to Pink Floyd's lyrics from the album The Wall, but it also is intended to commemorate the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. With all the challenges the world faces, political imbalances and conflicts, climate change, gender gaps, lack of human rights, and severe illnesses such as Ebola, we must intensify our efforts to offer education at all levels to the young generation. Education is a driving force and should be a cornerstone in every society. A good education provided by well-educated teachers not only gives young people opportunities to create a good life regardless of the background. A good education also promotes changes in order to remove obstacles, walls, and various kinds of ignorance. As I also have the experience from the ministerial level, my speech today will focus on higher education at regional, national, and international levels. But my starting point will be the mission of UNESCO. UNESCO's mission is to contribute to the building of peace, lasting development and intercultural dialogue, with education as one of its principal activities to achieve this goal. The organization is committed to a holistic and humanistic vision of quality education worldwide. The realization of everyone's right to education and the belief that education plays a fundamental role in human, social, and economic development. UNESCO's educational objectives are supported to the achievement of education for all, to provide global and regional leadership in education, to strengthen educational systems worldwide from early childhood into the adult years, and to respond to contemporary global challenges through education. Or as they say in one sentence, it is about putting quality education at the heart of development. Sweden is a small country with only a population of 9 million. Only 150 years ago, Sweden was a poor country. People were suffering from starvation and unemployment, and a lot of people therefore left the country to seek prosperity elsewhere. At the same time, in 1842, the government decided to introduce compulsory elementary schooling. Since then, education has been on the political Swedish agenda. However, only 40 years ago, the decision was made to establish higher education institutions in all regions of the country in order to increase accessibility to higher education. And interesting enough, a key figure of interest, today Sweden has more PhD students than we had students in upper secondary school in the 1950s. Even though accessibility has improved, we can still see that recruitment bias persists within higher education. Amongst today's higher education entrants, 37% under the age of 35 have parents with advanced educational qualifications. That is one parent who has completed at least 3 years of tertiary education. According to national statistics, in overall population between 19 and 34 years old, we see the opposite. 24% have parents with advanced educational qualifications, and 40% have parents without. The gender imbalance is still quite apparent in many of the programs. These comparisons roughly illustrate the social bias in recruitment to higher education and show that students whose parents have advanced educational qualifications are overrepresented even in a country without national tuition fees, such as Sweden. Unemployment is a critical issue in Europe. In my country, upper secondary education is virtually a prerequisite for young people to find a job. And we know that for people who hold an academic degree, the unemployment rate is very low. As I see it, all countries should focus on equity and access, improving quality, and ensuring that education develops knowledge and skills in areas such as democratic values, sustainable development, human rights, and gender equality. As a member of the European Union, Sweden has benefited from the structures and the support of the EU has to offer. EU policy and its educational programs have opened up for international cooperation both within Europe and beyond. Sweden, for instance, participated in the Erasmus program even before becoming a member of the EU. In addition, since 1971, the Nordic countries have had close cooperation on all levels, and there is a well-developed funding program for joint programs and projects. And for some years ago, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia also became part of this program. However, the strongest force during the last decade to modernize and develop the higher education sector in Europe has been the Bologna process. When the Bologna Declaration was signed in 1999, it was, and still is, a non-governmental agreement without a binding contract between 30 countries in order to create the European higher education area. The main objectives were to foster student mobility and employability, today rephrased to usability, through the introduction of a system based on undergraduate education and postgraduate studies with easily understandable programs and degrees, to make Europe more attractive and competitive as a higher education area. Since its inception until recently, Sweden has taken a prominent role in the process, with a special focus on quality assurance, student participation, and the social dimension of higher education. It is now apparent that the creation of the Bologna process was a unique undertaking, as it today includes almost 50 countries. Alongside ministerial meetings, 3 Bologna policy fora have been organized in an effort to widen the scope of the process. At one of the meetings, the overarching theme was Beyond the Bologna process, creating and connecting national, regional, global higher education spaces. The meeting was attended by all the member states plus 20 other countries, which indicates the need to discuss future aspects within, for instance, public responsibility on higher education, global academic mobility, incentives and barriers. International openness, mobility and recognition are now high on the Bologna process agenda. It is my wish that the broadening scope will encourage ministers of education in Europe to return to the ministerial meetings and not just hand over the meetings to civil servants, as these issues must be discussed at the political level in order to reach an outcome with necessary impact. The increased pressure on higher education institutions to deliver relevant, top-notch research and also applicable research, relevant education, innovation, and increasingly greater social responsibilities puts demands on both the institution and their leadership. In the global environment of higher education, it has become abundantly clear that institutions of higher education cannot afford to work alone. My own university, Mälardalen University, has developed a successful profile in Sweden by taking cooperation to co-production with the society at large, the public and the private sector. Situated in a densely populated area about 100 kilometers west of our capital, Stockholm, with a high number of both multinational companies such as ABB, Bombardier, Westinghouse, Volvo, and Ericsson, and the hundreds of SMEs, the university has now taken co-production to a new level, working in a regional global setting with universities and companies. But still, too few young people in the outskirts of our region embark on higher education, especially young men. Collaboration with the surrounding society has been part of Swedish higher education for long. For my university, co-production means that we have more intensive collaboration, covering not only single projects, but rather a portfolio of projects on equal footing. And this therefore includes the top management of all the participating partners involved, regardless if it's in private or public sector, so-called strategic partnerships. This means that we together identify problems and then combine our different competencies and perspectives in order to solve them, to the benefit and enhancement of society. Many of our projects reflect the regional global approach that we have been working with for a long time. In one of our international projects, the university cooperates with a number of companies from our region and then connects to universities and companies in India. This project has led to student and staff mobility, mobility between the staff of companies and the staff of universities, and to research cooperations across the sectors involving companies, organizations, and universities. It is my strong belief, and it was also emphasized by my colleague from the University of Haifa, Professor David Faraji, that international cooperation, seriously taken on board by the top management of the participations, enhances the quality of both research and education. It develops new ideas, highlights creativity, and last but not least, it reduces or even removes the gap between people from different disciplines and from different cultures, and as such, it should be looked upon as a peace project. A university that offers an international environment provides better understanding between people, and particularly young people with varying backgrounds. They learn about one another and exchange views and ideas. This is particularly important in the increasingly global world we are all a part of. And we need to foster young people and students with self-confidence and the belief that it is possible to enhance not only their own future, but the future for everyone. Personally, I can see no better way of taking on board all the critical challenges of our time, such as illiteracy, poverty, and climate change, than through education, especially when the education is delivered is of high standards and in an international environment. Pink Floyd protested in the 1970s that we don't need no education, at least not how it was provided in the different school environments at the time. My strong belief is that the education is the only way of promoting worldwide prosperous development for all, and of removing walls of obstacles and different kinds of ignorance. Education is another brick out of the wall. Thank you for your attention.